In 2010, Disney spent over $200 million making Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. The goal was clear. They wanted to recapture the success of their earlier Pirates of the Caribbean series with an epic adventure set in a fantasy version of ancient Persia. However, the end result was both nothing like the popular video game source material, while also falling short of the grand epics of yesteryear like Ben-Hur or Lawrence of Arabia. But in the end, the film was bloated and overcluttered with plot threads and characters, while maintaining two very privileged and unlikable leads. The characters, I mean, not the actors who played them. But with some careful restructuring of the story and manipulation of existing assets, the pieces could have been reshaped into something that would have satisfied the brief of Disney while also satisfying audiences with a leaner, cleaner structure and characters that audiences actually wanted to spend time with. So let's enter into a hypothetical situation whereby the Disney executives asked for a script rewrite just a few days before the cameras rolled. Now, on the surface, what's about to follow might look like a totally new movie, but stick around until the end and I'll go through just how this version of the movie could have worked, even with the rewrite coming so late in the process and being so wide-ranging. My name is Jim. I'm the script surgeon. Come with me back in time to 2010 as we fix Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. Chapter 1. Alamut. Firstly, we will set the entire film in the mythical city of Alamut, which was a key setting from the original film. Now, instantly, this choice should save money, as the original had many different settings and locations. We're tightening here, but this is going to serve our narrative well, and I've got some key beats coming up that will ensure that we don't lose that epic scope either. Since Jake Gyllenhaal and Gemma Arterton are both Caucasian, neither is going to be royalty in this version. Under script surgeon constraints, we can't change that casting, but we can ground Alamut as a multicultural trade city, where people of every background live side by side. Our leads become part of that mix rather than the ruling class, which is going to soften the backlash that surrounded the original casting while losing nothing in story or character. And it'll actually give us a cleaner place to start. The story begins with Jake Gyllenhaal's Dastan arriving on a donkey from the vast desert, a grifter who is down on his luck and looking to change his fortune. He's cocky and sure of himself, but completely reliant only on himself and his wits. However, he's soon noticed by the guards, who see through his scams, and this leads to an acrobatic chase through the marketplace, which catches the eye of Elika, played by Gemma Arterton, who runs a small crew of thieves. Soon, Dastan is caught and put in a stockade as the royal announcer appears on the podium to make an announcement. He states that what many have suspected for some months is true. The old king of Alamut is dying and he has no heir. Ancient tradition dictates that to determine his successor, a contest should be held. The king will retire to the topmost room of the tallest tower in his palace on the third autumn moon, which is tomorrow night, and the palace will be sealed and booby-trapped by his royal guards. Whoever enters the palace, beats the traps, and kills the king by sunrise will rule Alamut. Dastan is listening with interest. As the announcer talks, Elika introduces herself to the chained Dastan, offering to save him if he joins her cause. He wants a share of the king's treasure in return, and after a 10% figure is settled on, she subtly slips the bolt holding him, and he escapes with her back to her hideout in the city. Instantly here, we've established that the two leads have a mission and that they need each other, which gets us to the heart of their relationship much faster than in the theatrical version. By giving Gemma Arterton's character real agency and intellect, we are also elevating her from a rather whiny damsel in distress to something further akin to Princess Leia from Star Wars. Chapter 2. The contest begins. Back at the hideout, Elika introduces her crew, who will be helping her plan the assault on the palace. While the announcement was only just made, the signs have been pointing towards this occurring in the city for some months, and there are several interested parties who have begun preparations, just waiting for this official word, which they now have. She also explains who she thinks is the most dangerous opponent, which is the contingent of 20 men organized by Ben Kingsley's vizier. He is rumored to have a magical weapon of some kind. He was the king's most trusted advisor, so his appearance as a contestant here will raise some eyebrows. However, the contest itself is open to all, so he is allowed to join unhindered. Dastan spends the night in the hideout and learns Elika's plan throughout the next day. The contest is beginning that evening. Her plan is elegant. She intends to bypass the trapped palace altogether and use ropes and climbing equipment to go up the outside walls of the palace, never needing to risk the booby traps inside. She plans to beat the main contestants through speed and daring, and she wants to have reached the king by midnight. At dusk, and with some ceremony, Elika and Dastan watch from a window of the hideout as the aged king walks back across the bridge to the palace for what will be the last time, ready to seal himself in the topmost chamber and await the outcome of the contest. Importantly, the king will only be seen from afar here, a distant symbolic figure rather than a real character that we get to know. Elika laments that this king never had any children. He was a good king. Dastan is more interested in what she'll do with the money that comes from the royal treasury, and she indicates that she will continue to use it to help those less fortunate. She is certain that the vizier would be far less altruistic. The drawbridge slams shut, and she says they should go. The contest begins in a half an hour. They assemble in the courtyard. There is a huge drawbridge which connects the city to the palace. Just under 100 people are assembled ready to challenge. Dastan says he thought there'd be more, but Elika says they likely didn't want to pay the price of failure. And when he's confused by that, she says, well, if you're not the victor, you're executed in the morning. He's upset that she conveniently left that part out until now, but she ignores him and tells him that as soon as that starting horn sounds, they are to cross the drawbridge and make for the wall next to the gate, instead of heading inside with the others. He eyes the walls and says not even he can climb such a sheer face, but she says she has a plan. The horn sounds and all is chaos as they cross the bridge, with contestants pushing and shoving each other to the ground and off the edge of the drawbridge itself to the water below. Dastan and Elika make it to the wall, and a crossbow bolt slams into the stone above Dastan. This is Elika's plan, and with a grin, he starts to climb, with her roped to him from beneath. Slowly, they scale the sheer wall. It looks like her plan is working. Cutting back to the hideout, though, we see Elika's team, including the man firing the crossbow bolts. They're being taken out stealthily, one at a time, by an unseen black-clad assassin. Finally, the assassin chokes out the crossbow wielder as well, and Dastan and Elika are left trapped, unable to ascend any further, still 4 meters from the top of the battlements. Dastan asks Elika to unwrap the safety rope. He'll try and throw it up to the battlements to hook it round the stone, and then they can ascend the rest of the way. But she says no, thinking that he'll leave her behind. While they argue, guards flood the battlements and they're preparing boiling pitch to throw down on them. Soon, their argument over the rope turns to panic as Dastan just wants to jump into the moat below now, and Elika resists because she knows where that leads. Eventually, the boiling pitch is about to pour on them, and he makes the choice for her, jumping, and the safety rope tugs her off the wall with him, both of them plunging into the moat water far below. For those interested in story structure, we've now exited Act 1. We know the stakes, we know the players, and our characters have passed the point of no return. They've exited the normal world of the city of Alamut, and they've entered the unknown, the world of the palace contest. Production-wise, the palace walls are a redress of the existing version of the same thing from the theatrical, with alternate CGI for the set extensions, while the hideout and marketplace are also established locations from the theatrical as well. So we're keeping to our production constraints so far. Chapter 3. The Depths. Elika hits her head soon after the fall into the moat, and we cut to black, and she wakes in a large cave with a bubbling pool of water nearby. Dastan is surprisingly gentle with her, easing her up and explaining that they were washed out of the pool, the current being far too strong to swim back against. We cut to black with her unconsciousness to save money and assets because there wasn't a big underwater sequence in the theatrical version. Elika groggily looks about herself and then quickly panics. We need to get out of here now. But before Dastan can ask what is wrong, men in ragged clothing emerge from the darkness and capture them, leading them deeper into the caves, which show some signs of man-made sections. As they are roughly pushed along, Elika explains that they are in the king's dungeon, a place so hopeless there are no cells. and guards throw new prisoners into the moat and lower food scraps down a well to the prisoners rather than actually guarding the cells properly. There's just no need down here. She is clearly afraid. The situation seems grim as they're brought to a rough prisoner's court of sorts, with torches illuminating the space and a man dressed in soiled robes sitting on a wooden throne. This is Alfred Molina's character from the theatrical, but here he is completely reshaped as the leader of the prisoners, a man known as Wolf. He explains that it is tradition for new arrivals to duel for their place, and if they lose, they will be eaten. Dastan attempts to explain that they're here by accident, but Wolf says we're all here by accident, to vicious laughter around the circle. Since they arrived together, Wolf will make them fight together. 2 on 2 in the death pit. Dastan and Elika are chained together by their right hands, and as two vicious and unchained opponents get ready to face them, they have a moment to plan. Here, Dastan begs her to trust him, because he can beat these two guys if she helps him, but she remains convinced that she can outsmart them. The ensuing fight proves that they're both right, and after a rocky start, the two determine that they are indeed more effective as a team, with him physically enacting her plans and his quick reactions saving them multiple times before she could think of a solution. Their fight takes them further and further towards the well above their heads that is used to lower food down. And instead of killing their opponents, Dastan manages to hoist Elika over his head to grab the rope that hangs from the center of the well. As they start to climb, Wolf taunts them from below. It's a brutal vertical climb and no one has ever made it. We'll see you back down here real soon. The climb is tense, and soon Elika is exhausted, and Dastan grimly has her climb onto his back in a piggyback so that he is hauling them both up the rope, using his crossed legs over the rope as well as his arms. It's a Herculean effort from him, and soon Elika begins to whisper encouragement to him. The sequence becomes almost dreamlike, stretching time and space within the well, the viewer not always hearing what she's saying to him, but it is clearly spurring him on. Eventually, the trial ends and they sprawl out of the well, finding themselves in a small but abandoned guard's room adjoining the battlements. He peers at her through the veil of exhaustion as if seeing her for the first time, and she bids him to sleep, which he does right there on the stone floor. Now, to achieve Wolf's dungeon and the cave system, it'll be a redress of the Hassanson's lair, which is briefly seen in the theatrical version, as well as a redress of the desert caves, also seen towards the end of Act 2 in the theatrical. Now, the well itself is a new build, but it's contained, small, and a partial set, with a CG extension, and then it's also shot in this esoteric dreamlike way to hide those seams. Production-wise, we're still good here. Chapter 4. Traps. When Dastan awakens, Elika is looking out over the city below. How long? He asks her. I let you have an hour, she replies. He nods slowly, wondering where they go now. She indicates that all that effort only got them back to the place where they would have been if they hadn't fallen into the moat. Dastan notes that there are no guards this time, and she responds that they're here, just manning the trap rooms this late into the night. The trap rooms she was hoping to avoid with her original plan. She elaborates that most of the chambers in the palace that lead to the king's tower have been booby-trapped. Some are simple, some are difficult, some require physical skill, others mental agility. Some can be reset, others can be sprung only once. By coming up the well, they would have bypassed some of the simpler traps on the lower levels, but there are still plenty left, and the only way to see what they're like is to walk into them. Dastan grimly grabs some weapons, and the two of them leave the room, quickly seeing a courtyard below them with the vizier's team on one side. As they watch, they see one of his men attempt to cross the courtyard, but logs with vicious spikes coming out of them pop up from the ground and begin to rotate suddenly, and they turn away as the man meets a grisly end. After the vizier watches his man's defeat, they see him pull his small dagger from his belt, and he seems to shimmer 4 or 5 times as he approaches the spikes, always seemingly just avoiding them. Dastan remarks that he's spry for an old man, but Elika breathes, so that's how he's doing it. He has the dagger of time. That dagger resets time for its wielder, returning them to the recent past. He can try each trap as many times as he needs in order to pass it. Dastan looks grim. We'd better go then. They'll reach our level soon, and they'll be fast if what you say is true. The guardhouse and courtyard are also both existing sets from the theatrical, but here we'll just light them both for nighttime. The spiked logs are new, but given the distance and perspective, they can be CGI assets rather than new builds, so again, we're in the clear from a production perspective. Dastan and Elika soon arrive at the first clearly trapped room. It contains a simple floor with tiles that each have a symbol on them. The wall nearest to them has a scroll on it as well. Dastan says, "Should we just cross?" But Elika tosses a nearby vase onto one of the tiles, and it instantly breaks away to reveal a floor of burning hot coals below it. The implication is simple. If one falls through the floor, they would burn to death on the coals, the walls being too sheer to climb out. He says, "I guess the scroll helps us then?" She says that once she pulls it down, he needs to be ready because they won't have much time. He's about to ask why when she pulls the scroll off the wall and the floor instantly starts to retract into one of the walls, revealing the coal pit below them now as well. They have to solve the floor puzzle and start across the tiles before their section of the floor completely disappears. The scroll reveals an ancient poem that she seems familiar with, and though the scene is tense, she can guide them across, stepping carefully on tiles that won't break away. Only at the end does she become stumped and unable to solve the last 5 meters or so of tiled space. Dastan is concerned as the small section of floor on the side of the room that is the destination has also started to retract, and he says, "My turn." In a nimble feat that has to be seen to be believed, he launches himself towards the wall, taking several quick steps along it and landing on the safe stretch of floor. She looks at him in panic as she's still out on the treacherous tiled section, but he grabs a nearby candelabra, quickly detaching the rope it was hanging by and throwing it to her, pulling her to safety outside the room as the floor completely disappears. As they look at the destroyed trap room behind them, the vizier appears at the entry to the room, and he spies them on the other side. Smiling, he calls out, "I see you found a new friend, Princess Tamina. My Hassanson friend here made short work of your others." He gestures to the black-clad assassin, now revealed as the responsible party for taking out her team, while Dastan and Elika were scaling the wall earlier. The vizier continues, "Tell me, does this man know your plan is to offer this city as tribute to your own father?" She looks upset at that and gives a guilty look to an incredulous Dastan. The vizier continues, "Didn't get around to telling him that, I suppose. Well, this room seems spent. I'll have to find another way around. Don't dally too long, princess. Those executions take place at dawn." As the vizier leaves, Dastan looks to Elika in a care to explain sort of manner. After some hesitation, she explains that she is from the neighboring kingdom of Tarnash, and she and her team were sent to participate in the challenge when rumors of the king's ailing health reached them. As a woman, it is her younger brother who will inherit the kingdom of Tarnash. This was her one chance to rule because the challenge winner is crowned regardless of gender. Dastan asks her point blank, "And do you intend to deliver this city to your father?" She responds with, "Of course not," but he is now skeptical. He has no reason to trust her. She reminds him that his own motives aren't so noble at any rate. He's here for money. He replies quietly that the money was a bonus. To see her rule well, that would have been a real victory here. She affirms that the idea there is still her purpose. Nothing's changed, but he's clearly concerned. Okay, so now we're deep into Act 2, and the tile trap room is our first big head-scratcher from a production standpoint because there is not an equivalent for this in the theatrical version. I won't get into how I've justified it right now, but stick around to the end to find out. I haven't jumped the shark just yet with this one. Chapter 5. Complications. There's now a montage of smaller traps. The theatrical didn't have any trap sequences, so here we'll have to use montage, CGI, partial small set builds, and visual effects to make it seem like they go through several trap rooms without actually showing very much of any of them. But we'll be living in a lot of close-ups here anyway. It's not about the traps, it's about their broken trust, which makes their progress tenuous rather than assured. Eventually, they come to a great dining hall. It's cavernous, but it only contains 30 or so weary contestants, all of whom look like they've had a rough time. There was a banquet hall in the theatrical, so this is a nicely reused asset here. The vizier is also present with his men. Everyone seems waiting for something. An hourglass is at the end of the hall, and its sand has almost run out. Before they sit down, Elika says to Dastan that they should try and steal the vizier's dagger while they're here. The final stretch has the hardest and most perilous traps and dangers. Dastan thinks they're doing well enough, and the vizier has too many men with the dagger too well guarded. She's insistent, and he gets angry, saying that her arrogance will kill them both. She implores him to trust her, but it's clear that trust is now broken. Their argument is stopped by Dastan spying Wolf sitting at one of the tables. Incredulously, they join him, surprised, and asking how he escaped the dungeons. Wolf laughs, saying that they assumed he was trapped in the dungeons and that they should have just taken the stairs. Dastan asks, well, what about the rest of the prisoners? And Wolf wryly comments that Dastan and Elika aren't the only ones who didn't know about the stairs. Wolf says that he knows the palace better than anyone, and tonight is his night. The night to make his way to the top and take it for real. He notes that something has changed between Dastan and Elika. They don't seem to be getting along. Elika rolls her eyes at that and walks away. Just then the hourglass runs out and the mechanisms grind under the table, with food arriving on dumbwaiter systems from below them. The exhausted contestants waste no time falling hungrily on the food. Dastan is concerned it might be poisoned or part of the trap, but Wolf assures him. The Darkest Night Feast is part of the ceremony, a reward for surviving late-stage contestants. They only have 15 minutes before the end of the hall opens again and they can continue. Wolf asks what Dastan did to annoy Elika, but Dastan says it was the other way around, and that Elika lied to him about who she was. Wolf says so what, pointing out that he also lied to Dastan about his place in the palace, but Dastan is happy to sit with him and eat now. Dastan says it's not the same. He thought Elika was better than that. But Wolf again points out that it's not her fault, she's not perfect, and the truth is in someone's eyes and actions, rarely in their words. There's a commotion on the other side of the hall, and the vizier and his men are now holding Elika captive, their loud conversation making it clear that she tried to steal the dagger on her own and failed. The vizier announces to the room that she is actually Princess Tamina of Tarnash, and she's there to usurp their kingdom. He also points out that he and his men have the best chance of reaching the throne room, so he'd like to play a game. He will release Elika onto the high path, and he will spare the life of whoever manages to kill her and bring the vizier her necklace as proof. Just then, the feast time ends, and two doors open mechanically at the end of the room, the high path and the servants' gate. Wolf breathes to Dastan, no one takes the high path. It's a gauntlet exposed to the elements on the exterior of the palace walls. The vizier pushes Elika onto the high path, urging her cruelly to run. She spares a fleeting look to Dastan, fear in her eyes, and then she turns to run. Several opportunistic contestants dart after her. Wolf looks to Dastan. I'm no hero. But Dastan makes a decision. You owe us for keeping those stairs to yourself, so try to keep up. And as he runs towards the high path, there's a grimace from Wolf, who then reluctantly follows. Chapter 6. The High Path. Elika is running out on the high path. The high path is revealed to be a series of stone ledges and paths that trace the exterior of the palace walls. At this point, they are very high up, and any fall would mean certain death. The time of night is now pre-dawn, so this sequence will be a mixture of closer coverage on the high path itself with some epic wide shots of the figures on the wall that are full CGI. There isn't a one-for-one equivalent for this sequence from the theatrical. However, it is relatively contained with CGI assets for the wide shots, so it's reasonable to include if we hypothetically scheduled it later in production to justify the build time. Dawn will break gradually over the sequence. Elika is terrified and running for her life as the opportunistic contestants race after her. Dastan comes last of all, having to catch the contestants and dispatch them as he makes his way to Elika in the lead. It's a thrilling sequence with great parkour stunts and lots of high falls. Eventually, the Hassanson has Elika cornered, with the next section of the high path completely broken away and impassable. Dastan arrives just in time as they lock eyes for a moment in mutual agreement. Their trust restored, and their earlier dynamic leaps into play here. Elika yelling strategy and Dastan improvising physical feats of athletic prowess so that they can take on the formidable Hassanson together, eventually forcing him to plummet to his death. Elika and Dastan reconcile as dawn breaks, with Wolf appearing a few meters behind them, puffing, as he says, The vizier will almost be at the throne room by now. We don't have enough time to double all the way back and still beat him, but we have to try. Come on, this pathway is broken." With that, he starts running back, not sparing a thought for the others as he dashes away. Elika is more thoughtful, looking at the broken path in front of them. "If we could just cross this gap, we might make it in time. The palace is meticulously prepared before the trials, and we're the first ones to take the high path tonight. This shouldn't be in disrepair unless it's..." And it's Dastan who realizes her line of thinking and finishes for her. "Another test," he breathes. Elika and Dastan start looking around the small ledge desperately, trying to find some sort of clue as to what they need to do next. Eventually, Dastan finds a small carved inscription on one of the tiles in old cuneiform, which Elika translates. It's a small rhyme indicating that they need to leap into the unknown, leaving all burdens behind them. They interpret this to mean that the path has to have no weight on it, and they have to all jump seemingly into the empty air before them together. A tense moment, but eventually Elika and Dastan leap together, and as they do, the platform retracts behind them, and after a moment of panic, another one slides out from the wall beneath them to break their fall. The two of them now being able to run easily along the path to a clear doorway where they can re-enter the palace, finding themselves in a hallway that leads to the throne room, but at the opposite end is the vizier. Chapter 7. Death and Rebirth. The vizier has only 2 henchmen left at this point, and clearly he has had a difficult time with the last round of traps. The hallway they find themselves in now has many tapestries and banners hanging off the walls, and as Dastan's group and the vizier's group both begin to run towards one another for the door in the middle, pressure plates in the floor activate and vicious spikes begin to pop up from the ground, approaching from either end in a wave of deadly steel. There were many royal hallway sets from the theatrical, and the spikes that we've added here will be CGI ads. The tapestries and banners are a reasonable enough addition, even with the stunt work that we're about to add here. Dastan urges Elika to leap from the ground and grab the hanging tapestries on the walls to stay above the spikes. She does so, and their traversal slows dramatically, with Dastan helping her with his notable agility along the wall. The vizier and his group copy the tactic, and soon the vizier begins blurring as he approaches with startling speed, clearly using the dagger of time to approach far more quickly, resetting time when he makes a mistake. Elika urges Dastan to go on without her. If he doesn't make any mistakes, his athletic skills might make him as fast as the vizier. Grimly, Dastan begins running along the wall, grasping at the tapestries and banners in another desperate feat of agility and physical prowess. Soon, he swings in through the doorway to the throne room, just as the vizier blurs through the same opening. The two sprawl along the floor together, finding themselves in a small antechamber. The aged vizier is clearly struggling with the effort that has been required of him, but he remains confident. "You can't win. Any mistake I make, I can simply rewind until you are beaten. Your youth and skill mean nothing here. I have all the time in the world." The two square off, Dastan very cautious, not willing to fully engage until he knows how to play the conflict. He mutters to himself, "What would she do?" Before eventually it comes to him. He feints one way, then appears to stumble, and the vizier plunges the dagger deep into Dastan's stomach. His hands grip the hilt even as the pain racks his body before he looks up at the vizier smiling and reaches for the small button on the hilt. The vizier's eyes widen in realization. No, but it's too late. Dastan has pressed the button, and now time seems to rewind for him. The dagger seemingly split in two as time reverses for him, the dagger's new wielder. It exits his stomach, and the wound seals over with time's reversal. When he releases the button, he is standing, still holding the dagger, with the vizier looking down to his own hand in shock, seeing that Dastan now has the dagger somehow. But Dastan doesn't waste any time, delivering a sharp blow to the vizier's head, knocking him out and running through the thin gossamer curtains at the end of the antechamber into the throne room proper. Chapter 8. The End and the Beginning. The room opens into a circular column chamber with open-air sides, showing the vistas around the palace. This is the highest point of the palace, the High Throne Room, and sitting alone, elevated and now dressed in a fine robe, is Wolf. Set-wise, we had many airy royal chambers in the theatrical that could be redressed to work for this scene. Dastan is puzzled. "I don't understand. How did you beat me, and where is the king? Wolf smiles. I know the palace better than anyone because I am the king. He reveals that he suspected his vizier was attempting to usurp him and take the throne, but he didn't know for certain. He also suspected that the vizier had the fabled Dagger of Time, but he couldn't find it. The great challenge was really nothing more than a large trap to lure the vizier into the open with the Dagger of Time. Dastan is confused. What happens now, though? The tradition is ancient and it must be honored. The people will demand it. Someone will kill you. Wolf remains smiling. And Dastan realizes, or I give you the dagger and you wind back this evening like it never existed? At that, Wolf nods. Dastan goes to give him the dagger, but he hesitates. She won't remember me, and I won't remember her. Wolf confirms that that's how it will be. He announced the challenge publicly 2 days ago, after preparing for it secretly for some months. He would need to turn back time to before the announcement was made formally, otherwise there would be public outcry. For a moment, Dastan considers using the dagger himself, but Wolf explains that even if Dastan turned over the dagger to him prior to the contest, Wolf would have had a hard time believing Dastan's story. But more than that, he indicates that for Dastan to remember what Elika doesn't, well, it wouldn't be fair, would it? In response, Dastan gives the king the dagger reluctantly, but says he wants a favor in return. We don't hear what it is as we cut wide and see a massive beam of light rise through the breaking dawn from the top of the palace. Dastan blinks and he's back in the stockade, confused. The speaker is up on the stage about to read from a scroll when the king himself appears and asks for a quiet word instead. The speaker puts the scroll away and orders that Dastan be seized and brought to the palace, along with Elika, who is plucked from the crowd. In the throne room, a confused Dastan and Elika, who clearly now don't know each other, are brought before the king, a more regal-looking wolf on his throne once again. He explains that he knows Elika is from a foreign kingdom and is a spy, and he also knows that Dastan is to be imprisoned for his schemes in the marketplace. However, he says both can be redeemed if they do something for him, undertake a task, together, of great danger in a foreign land. Neither has a choice, so both reluctantly agree, but it's Elika who asks, "Why us?" To which Wolf just smiles. "I thought you'd get along well once you got to know each other." And then to Dastan he adds, "I have no heir, so if you do this for me, I will legitimize you to succeed me when I die. You would be a Prince of Persia." Dastan is incredulous, "But you don't even know me." And he and Elika are bewildered as Wolf continues to smile, and we cut to credits. Chapter 9. Constraints and Compromises. In a real-world scenario, my late-stage rewrite here would certainly raise some eyebrows. The entire shape of the story is different, and many locations and characters have been completely cut. However, we are mostly just spending longer in existing locations from the theatrical that have been expanded and redressed, and we've allocated our CGI budget a little bit differently. If you are making this movie this way from the start, well, what I've got here is more like $120 million in 2010 money rather than the $200 million that they actually spent. But doing it last minute like this, well, that's probably going to make up a lot of that additional figure there. And we also had one completely new and extensive build, which was that first trap room. I'd be recommending shooting this particular sequence in the mandated reshoot or pickups block of filming that these productions always build into the schedule at the end, rather than trying to integrate it into the main shoot. Otherwise, we are surprisingly on track here to get this done, even if the changes were made close to day one of filming. Now, the line producer would likely have a heart attack or quit, but it is possible, and in the end, we'd have something more structurally sound with more likable and well-rounded characters that also respects the source materials and the studio's goals. Would I do it this way if I had free reign and $200 million from the get-go? Absolutely not. But I think as a late-stage script surgeon, you could do a lot worse than this version of Sands of Time. But in the end, it doesn't matter what I think. What did you think of my changes? If you like the rewrite, leave a comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time for some more script surgery.